My name is Aaron Churchman, and this is Morality, and I am a walking testimony of the power and truth of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Failure. Failure is a lack of success or defeat in some cases. To most of us, failure is something we fear the most in our lives. But as long as we live, the more we have to deal with it, right? Now, has there been moments in your life to where you felt like a failure? Maybe you made a promise over and over but keep breaking it unintentionally. Or maybe you had another chance at something important and you failed miserably once again. Or how about this? You had an opportunity to advance in life, whether it be spiritually, physically, socially, financially, or emotionally. But the process to accomplish these life-changing opportunities, fear stepped in its way instead, causing you to miss out on that opportunity God had for you specifically. You failed. Does this sound like the person in the mirror sometimes? We all have failed at something in our lives that either hurt us or others in the process. But the best thing about this is that God knows that all humanity failed, and God's plan in knowing this, He gives each and every one of us an opportunity to overcome and conquer our defeats and failures, because we serve a mighty God. So today I want to encourage and enlighten you on a few things. What causes us to fail? The pros and cons when dealing with failure when fear is involved. How to overcome the fear of failure. What is God's plan for when we do fail? And I'd like to share a closing testimony of how I defeated a major failure that haunted my life while serving the Lord. Okay, now I bet you're wondering if you knew what causes us to fail. Well, it's not that simple. Not even to the wisest intellectuals on the face of this earth can avoid failure. Let's look at King David, for example. He was a simple shepherd who killed a lion and bear with a sling without fear. He also killed Goliath with one single stone. While all the other Israelites were terrified of Goliath, little David was not fearful. David overcame and literally conquered fear with the Lord on his side. David resembles that God did not give us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. David became anointed, and the Spirit of God was upon him as he reaped the blessings thereof. Now he eventually became a great king, the first king of Judah at that time. All of these things he accomplished with success. There was no failure in his blood, though it seemed. Although David was a devout man of God, he still broke about half of the 10 Commandments while being king. He coveted Uriah's wife, Bathsheba. He killed Uriah. He committed adultery. He practically stole Bathsheba from Uriah. And he lied in the process of his deceitful plans. David is one of the Old Testament men we are inspired by, as an important figure. So why did he fail, or what caused him to fail while being a follower of God? Now, we get to a point within our accomplishments to where we forget that by the grace of God and only God brought us this far and allowed success in our life. We eventually go for more beyond what our limits are and forget about our sole reliance on God Himself. We then fail from the lack of obedience to God. Trying to do it on our own always results in failure. God will show us our faults and failures to our face to correct us and direct us back to waiting on Him and our reliance on Him. He doesn't want none of us to fail completely. And what I mean by completely is by turning our backs on God in disbelief and denouncing our faith because we cannot accept our many failures in our life. We fail in other ways as well. For instance, if you're up for an interview and use the wrong word or words, or an audition and you forget the words or freeze up on stage, you also may have a major test and fail to pass that. Whatever the case of failure may be, God gives us that opportunity to fail and grow at the same time. This leads us into the pros and cons of failure with or without fear being involved. So, pro number 1. The good things about failing is if we look at it in a different perspective as an opportunity for growth. We never know what we could be if we never tried, right? We will never get it right the first time in most cases. We must learn from the mistakes that cause us to fail. It's only when you risk failure that you discover things. When you play it safe, you are not expressing the utmost expression of your gift or passion in life. How can you help or share with others what you have that can change lives by leaving a great impression if you do not try? A second pro is that failure can be actually an accomplishment in that you actually did something you enjoyed doing but didn't succeed on the first try. You didn't let fear stop you from trying in the first place. You then would have to assess the mistakes and establish your limits. Do not make high standards beyond what you can do. You must accept your limitations as how much you can actually do versus what you want to do. Failing is always an opportunity to succeed, and do not forget that. Now, here are some cons about failure. Now, I realize that in grade school, we were all taught to never fail and that there are consequences if we do. A poor grade can get you in trouble with your parents and you can become grounded. You can fail a class and end up having taken summer school while all of your other friends are enjoying the great summer without you. You can get kicked off the football team or whatever sports you're in. There are really no incentives in school. There's more consequences than anything. Even at our jobs, sometimes we are told that we do not have the ability or degrees and knowledge to do a certain duty. This causes us to want to give up as if there's no hope for your success at all. Well, maybe that job is not for you. And maybe we need to relearn life and its many failings that ended up being successful. Other people, for example, who have failed but succeeded in the process. Another con with failure is the difficulty of recovering from it. Beating yourself down will not make things any better. If you dwell in your misery and sorrow from a failed attempt at something, you will not grow from that experience and level of an epic fail. You must accept it and move on with a different plan. Following Jesus will lead you down the right and perfect path. Even when it seems impossible, He can do it. All things are possible with God. Now, how can we overcome the fear of our failure? You may ask yourselves this many times. I watched a video about how we can look beyond the failing picture of something we're trying to accomplish and make it work in our favor. And we know in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who are called according to His purpose. If you are nervous and fearful, remember that God did not give us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. If you show up, then God will definitely show out. He wants us to take a step out in faith and do what He has called us to do. And this is the only way we can grow in our trust with the Lord. If we do not get out of our comfort zone, then how can we expect a change in our own lives? How can we succeed in what gifts and talents God has blessed each and every one of us with? How can you live a life in total fear of what we were not created for? Fearful people make it easier for the enemy to succeed and scare you as a child of God, which is impossible because there's nothing that can separate you from the love of God and His protection. We are more than conquerors. We are overcomers. Never let or allow the enemy to get a foothold on you and yours. It says in Psalms chapter 91, verse 1, "Those who live in the shelter of the Most High will find rest in the shadow of the Almighty." So as you're going about trying to accomplish these things and become successful, remember that God will always be with you, and if it's His will, then it shall be done automatically. There's nothing that can stop Him from His will being executed and performed just the way He wants it to be. Rest in God's presence and abide in Him as He abides in you. You will notice the truth behind fear and what its intentions are to destroy you. Now, a failure will never try on and persevere. A failure will make excuses for their faults. A failure will not accept it and learn from it to grow. A failure will not continue on and finish the race. A failure has no means of success. A failure has every opportunity to succeed. Look at it this way. If you don't try, then you won't know if you would succeed. You will always be stuck with the what-if situation. Now, a time in my life, I was doubtful and feared expressing my deepest emotions and feelings to just anybody that wasn't in my immediate family. Even then, I wouldn't show that much emotion towards them when it dealt with me doing my music or singing or something that I was very passionate about. I was scared to let others hear my music and my lyrics because I knew I would have critics of all sorts. I knew there would be some constructive criticism like every artist has. How do you think they started? Think about that. Now, I began to realize that when you are nervous, it's the same as being anxious for something. Now, the Lord tells us not to be anxious for anything, but we do it anyway. And for what reasons? I've learned that when you're nervous before you do something that you're passionate about, that just means that you really love and care about what you're doing and what the purpose of you doing it for. And our purpose here on earth is what God gives us. So you're doing it because you care about your purpose here on earth. Now, as the years went by, I began to understand the consequences behind not putting your passionate work out there, which you were blessed with to share with others to help in the first place. This was a gift from God to me, and I honored it to take it and use it all for His glory. God has a plan for you as He does me. He will take care of all the needs and always will for His will to be done. My advice to you, never let fear cancel a blessing that is waiting for your courageous and faithful steps of success in God's plan for your life and purpose. Or you will be stuck wondering, what if? Failure. Do not be a part of it, and if you are, learn the success that you can come out of with failure.